Hello, hello, and welcome to the second half of season 5. I can't believe that we're already halfway through the year. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can lead a lit up life. And with that, I want to again welcome you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love to do without sacrificing what's important to them. It's really important to me to help people realize what they want their life to look like so that their business can be a conduit to that. I am really excited today to have Hillarie Kay with us. For those of you that know me and know my team, Sarah, my right-hand gal, and Hillarie are good friends. And so we were introduced that way. And there are, as podcasters, we are always looking for guests, and there are people that like to be on multiple different podcasts. And so that's part of how Hillarie and I met. We met briefly, actually, before we started to record this. But I'm really excited for you to meet Hillarie. I've already, your vibe, your vibration is really high, and I'm anxious to have this conversation with you. So Hillarie, introduce yourself to the listeners, and that way they know a little bit about your background and what you do today.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm so excited. Like you said, I am one of those people that I love being on different podcasts. I don't have one on my own, but I love guesting. I love the connections that I get to make through this amazing platform. And so just feel very honored to be a guest with you today. So thank you for having me. But yeah, as you mentioned, my name's Hillarie, and I'll give you guys, my elevator, right? My two lines that sum it up, and then I can go into a little bit more background. But I am an Enneagram coach and trainer. So I help high achieving business owners, all of us entrepreneurs out there, corporate executives and teams reduce burnout and increase performance by using the Enneagram. And so I use the Enneagram as the tool to help entrepreneurs and teams and corporate leaders learn more about themselves, because you have to have empathy for yourself and knowledge for yourself before you can have empathy and knowledge, about others. So I use this as a tool to help you learn about yourself, so then you can start observing yourself in action in order to create transformational habits that help you avoid that burnout cycle. And we each have our own burnout cycle. So I have made it my mission to help you learn your unique burnout cycle via your Enneagram type, and use that to really customize a life for you that is sustainable. And, I talk a lot about work-life balance, and I say work-life balance is a marketing term. It shouldn't be work-life balance. It's life balance, because our professional lives directly reflect into our personal lives and vice versa. And we're not robots, right? We are one person. And so we have to create a life that's sustainable in order to avoid those burnout patterns and cycles.
Yeah, thank you, Hillarie. And it's interesting. I did a podcast years ago, because this is our 5th season, about work-life balance and how it's I use the word harmony, because for me, balance, my mind does a little trick with itself, thinking it always has to be balanced. And but I like that idea of life balance and how it all needs to be integrated and play together. So when you talk about tools, and it's interesting because when you talk about self-awareness and empathy, I teach classes at Gonzaga University, and a lot of things about servant leadership. And one of the key pieces is self-awareness and empathy. And so that really resonated with me. When you think about Enneagram, and I don't know how many of my listeners know that much about Enneagram, can you tell us a little bit about the tool? I know I went to one, I've tested out as 2 different things. So I'm interested to know a little bit, if you don't mind sharing, about the tool. And I know there's the numbers, and just briefly, or if you even have something on your website that people can reach out to you and maybe even take a test, because I know there's a test that you can take. Just tell us about Enneagram. Tell us everything.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, how long do you have, Debbie? Because I
Right.
could talk about this forever, but just to give you a little taste about what it is. So the Enneagram is a psychometric tool, right? So you've heard of other things like Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strength Finders, all amazing tools. The Enneagram is based on 9 core types. And what is different about this tool is that it doesn't only tell you your strengths or your, like, are you a feeler? Are you a thinker? Right? It doesn't just tell you those things, right? So a lot of assessments and a lot of psychometric tools tell you the what.
Mhm.
Why I love the Enneagram is because it focuses on the why. And the why is the root of obstacles, right? Success or failure. The why is the root. And so the Enneagram is based on core motivation. And so not only do you learn about your strengths, you also learn about your obstacles and you learn about your patterns, like your recurring patterns. And it all goes back to the core motivation and the core fear. And those dictate everything else. And so it helps you really get in touch with um, being able to like own your atmosphere in a
Yeah.
room and to own like, oh, like, you could put 5 people in a room that one of their top strengths, they would say, like, I'm detail oriented. But why are you detail oriented? Right? Are you detail oriented because you are so scared that you're never going to be good enough? Are you
Yeah.
detail oriented because you're scared of failure? Are you detail oriented because at the top of your list is you have to be competent?
Mhm.
Right. And so it brings just this added depth to the why behind what people do. And it really helps when it comes to communication and conflict and increasing performance, avoiding those obstacles, because you are getting to the root. You're not just looking at the what.
Right. Right. And that's so important because I deal a lot with core wounds
Yeah.
and digging down into, and I believe I know kind of an industry standard that there's 2 core wounds. One is that I'm not enough and I'm not lovable. And my take on it is that everybody's core wound is I'm not lovable, because if I don't feel worth it, then it leads typically to the next one about lovable. And what I love about this is it goes like further in with what are those core fears that we have, which do drive, because neuroscience, right, the messages that we receive in our subconscious brain create the actions and the habits, which is the why, right? And so
Yeah.
somewhere in there, that message has been given and we've received it and interpreted it the way we've interpreted it, that then creates the fear, which creates the why behind why we do things and why we don't do things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Enneagram's language has evolved so it's more acceptable in certain places. But at the beginning, it was called the wound, the core wound, instead of the core fear or core motivation. It's that childhood wound. And so it's exactly what you're just saying. It all goes back to this core piece, which affects performance, right? And can get us in cycles that we don't want to be in.
Right. Right. And I love this because, like I'll share my core fear is to be alone.
Mhm.
And I know deep down that I'm not alone. But when I go into situations like that, potentially it can trigger me if I'm not conscious, if I'm in the non-conscious state. But it all leads to then this idea of, am I lovable? Right? Am I
Yeah.
am I enough? And then am I lovable? And will people show me love without achieving, without doing these other things? And so I'm glad to hear that as you work through that. So when you think about Enneagram, can you tell us a little bit, like a brief little thing about each of the numbers, and then how this plays in for you to help people? Well, let's start with that, and then I'll go to
Yeah.
this question. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start out with the type 1. I'll go in order 1 through 9. And again, these are just basics, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
type,
High level.
that, yes, very high level. And I want to preface by saying I strongly believe that the Enneagram should not put you in a box,
Mhm.
right? It is not your landing place, it is your launch pad. It is to give you a place to start to grow. Your Enneagram type is not an excuse. That's one of the things like I lead off with is like, you can't just blame your behavior because you're a type whatever, right? So keep that in mind as we're going
Have to take
through some of these listeners.
Yeah, we have to. I teach a lot on the universal laws. So, folks, as you're listening, what she's saying is the subsidiary law of the law of cause and effect is the universal law of 100% accountability. Like, you have to take accountability because the law of cause and effect says you are first cause. It depends, and you're always in cause. It depends on what effect you want. And so, to that point, I want to reemphasize that, like, it's not an
Yes.
excuse. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. I love that. All right. So we'll start with the type 1. So the
Okay.
type 1 is often known as the improver or the reformer. Sometimes they're known as the perfectionist, but some type 1s got really annoyed at that term. So we have found that the reformer or improver more encompasses. So their core motivation is to be good, to be right. They are very ethical and moral. So their core fear is to not be good, like for people to think they're not good or that they're wrong or that they're, don't know, right, or not integrous, right? So that is the type 1. The type 2 is often known as the helper. And their core fear is not being loved, people not wanting them, not needing them. And so they are motivated, their core motivation is helping, right? So that they want to feel loved, they want to be lovable. And so they're going to do everything they can to make sure that that fear doesn't happen. The type 3, I'm a type 3. The type 3 is known as the achiever. Their core fear is failure. And they are motivated. So their core motivation is to be successful, to be respected, and to be competent, which in turn will make them worthy of your respect, right? So there's a lot of like worthiness wrapped up in the type 3. Then we're going to move on to the type 4. The type 4 is often known as the individualist or the creative. So their core fear is that there is just something missing within them, like that they are just like there is something that they are deplete of. And so their core motivation is to feel significant, to feel complete, to feel whole. The next is the type 5. The type 5 is often referred to as the investigator or the observer. And their core fear is not being resourced, not having enough. And so their core motivation is to be resourced, right? Knowledge, information, competency. That's what motivates them. Then we go to the type 6. The type 6 is often known as the loyalist or the loyal skeptic. Their core fear is not being safe or secure. And so again, the flip side, their core motivation is they are going to do everything they can to bring safety and security to their situation. So they're the ones that are going to they see all of the possible problems right up front. Like that is so natural to them to see all the good things that could happen and all the bad things that could happen. And they're going to have a path for all of them because they are motivated by safety and security. And they do that with relationships too. Then you go to the type 7, and the type 7 is often known as the enthusiast. Their core fear is feeling trapped or emotional or psychological pain. And so their core motivation in turn is to have fun, to bring joy to the situation, to explore the possibilities, to bring hope. And so anything to make them not feel like they're confined or that like the negativity, like they will do everything to avoid a negative situation. They're always going to be like that person that's going to like reframe and like let's get this energy back up. Then we'll go to the type 8. The type 8 is often known as the challenger. And their core fear is a lack of independence, weakness, a lack of control. And so they're motivated by like lots of strength, to gain strength, to gain power, right? And those words, sometimes 8s get a bad rap because it's like, oh, they're just like, they're controlling, but it's because they're worried. They don't want to appear as weak. They
Right.
don't want to be appeared like they need everything to face a dangerous world, right? That's what part of their core wound is like at some point in their life there was a danger that they had to protect themselves
Right.
from. So that's what their motivation is to protect, to be strong. And then lastly, we have the type 9. And the type 9 is often known as the peacemaker or the mediator. And their core fear is conflict or being misunderstood. So their core motivation, right, is to avoid conflict, to bring in a calming atmosphere, to make sure everyone's listened to. They're motivated by keeping the peace. So they'll often sacrifice their needs in order to make sure everyone else like just keeping the peace. And so that is a very quick and dirty
Yeah, yeah.
explanation of
High
the
level.
9 types. And again, we don't want to be reductionistic. And this, like, it's hard not to be when you are just going through them so quickly. But that should give folks a good example of at least an idea of a starting point for each of the 9 types.
Yeah. And Hillarie, do you use a certain testing mechanism? Because I know I've gone out and searched, right? Because so I'm certified in Myers-Briggs. And so
Yeah.
I have a lot of understanding, of that tool and the preferences. And it does kind of explain some of the why, but not to this point where it ties it to the core wounds and core fears. And so when you think about a testing, do you have something out on your website that people can like pay for a test and go through this?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So there are lots of Enneagram assessments out there, a lot. The one that I send my clients to, if they are going to take an assessment, I will tell you why I don't think assessment is the best is the best route to go. But the Art of Growth, and I actually partner with them when I do my corporate trainings, when we do our big, groups of 50, people, we go in together, but they have a really incredible assessment on their website, theartofgrowth.org. And that's the assessment I always send people to. It is the most accurate that I have found. Assessments like the Enneagram, like for the Enneagram, are only about 55% accurate. And here is why, because it's based on the why, right? The assessments are a computer program. So they don't know if you're answering these questions stressed out. They don't know if you're answering these questions in a growth path. They don't know if you're male, female. They don't know your cultural overlays. They don't know any of that, right? We can't gather all of that information in an assessment. So an assessment is a place to start, and you'll get like 3 of your top matches on that assessment. If you choose to take an assessment, it'll give you like the 3 top matches. And then it's really important to read through those and really look at those stories and things like that. And we always recommend, like Enneagram practitioners always recommend, a typing interview. Like, connect with an Enneagram practitioner, because we can then, based on your body language, right? We can ask a further question like, oh, you said it this way. If you were given 2 options, which one, right? And so we're all trained on to how to ask the right questions in order to, like, on a typing interview, it's like about a 95% accurate versus the assessment's like 55% accurate.
Okay, great. And so doing an interview helps. So let me ask you this. Is it,
Yeah.
because I find with my Myers-Briggs even that I can sometimes see themes and figure out the letter combinations for
Yep.
them. And I know there's wings and all sorts of stuff, and we don't have time to get into that today. I wish we did. We might have to do another segment that's just like a special one that's an hour long. But
Yeah.
I know there's wings. The one I went to talked about a triangle,
Yep.
because mine came out as a 3, but then I also, like with my family, I tend to be a 9. And then the 6th is like, I'm loyal, although I'm changing that one. Like I am loyal to the end, even if it's like hurting me in the process. And so, like when, I don't know, I think about that and how there's all this complexity. So the interview helps you identify that, but then like, what's the triangle and what are the wings? You don't have to go like super in
Yeah.
depth. Like I hear
No.
all this verbiage about it and I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I love that. So, let's start with how you said that your core is a 3, which meeting you just now, that was my best. Like, I was like, I'm feeling some 3 energy, from
Okay,
her.
yeah, that's right.
And
Because I was asking if you could like tell if people, that was
yes,
the COVID brain hit there, like
yeah,
if you could tell just from talking with people
you
where they
can.
kind of fit.
Yeah, and like you said, how
How
like
boxy.
you've been doing Myers-Briggs long enough that you're able to, right? And so, yes, as an Enneagram practitioner, I'm able to pick on signs, but at the end of the day, I don't know what motivates you,
Right.
right? Like I have no idea until I ask them like deeper, like when you were 5, tell me about this situation, right? Like going back to those others. But so everyone has a core type, but then like you mentioned, they have 2 types that are called resource points.
Okay.
And so what your resource points are you are going to pick up what we call the high side of the type, so the high side of your core type and your 2 resource points when you are in a growth cycle. So you are you'll if the and this is part of how I do the Enneagram with burnout, because this is the flip side. You will also be able to know if you're in a burnout cycle because you will start to exhibit the low side of your type and your connection points type, your resource lines. And so those are helpful for you. You can glean off of those things to help you, those 2 resource points to help you go from burnout to balance,
Mm,
burnout to growth, because it's
right.
using the techniques of those types. We have all 9 types within us, but we just have them at different percentages.
Right.
And so we have this tool, this diagram that shows us our highest percentage and then the ones that connect to us the most and are going to bring us most balance. And so those are that you were talking about the triangle. You're a 3, so you have a perfect triangle. But every type has 3 types that are connected. So you have the 3, 6, 9. It's the nice equilateral triangle, but then you have some isosceles triangles and all of that in there. But the key is that every type has 2 resource points. And then you also have your wings, which are your 2 other connection points. And I think of those as like your best friends. Like they are your sidekicks. There are people will often say, like, yeah, I'm a 3 wing too. But I have really come to, through research and working with other Enneagram practitioners, is a bird, right? Like I think of a bird, like a bird walking is your core type, right? You can get there, you can get to that next place, but it's not the fastest, right? A bird can pull out one wing and it can fly, but it's not going to do so as sustainable as possible. So the goal is for you to use both of your wings to soar. And so pulling on those helpers next to you, your best friends, your sidekicks, like, ooh, like as a 3, I need to start thinking more about people than my projects. So I need to go and get some of my love from my 2s who just want to serve people. And then sometimes I might need to go over to my 4 because I'm so like external that I need to start getting some internal with my feelings. So I need to come bring in some of that help of the 4. They're there for that reason. And so they're your helpers. They're a part of your sustainable journey. So it's not about just your core type. It's those 2 resource points
Okay.
and your 2 wings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for going through that. And
Yeah.
I know I was talking to my sister. She's been very interested in Enneagram, and I've heard about it for a long time, have gone to different presentations about it, but how you just explained it made sense to me.
Awesome.
And so thank you for that. And so, Hillarie, if someone does want to reach out to you, they want to know more about what you do, maybe even go through an Enneagram interview with you and figure this out, where would you send them?
Yeah, so I am Hillarie Kay everywhere. And so my website is hillariekay.com, and then Instagram at Hillarie Kay. You'll get like a wealth of, on my Instagram, there's a wealth of free information and ways to connect with me, burnout programs, corporate training opportunities, all of that. It's all there. Instagram's really my hub, but of course my website is there as well.
Well, perfect. Hillarie, thank you so much for being on and for
Yeah.
sharing this important tool and how this fits into burnout and helping people get out of burnout. So for those of you listening, if you feel like you want to know more about the Enneagram and or you're feeling burnout, I talked to so many people post the pandemic and post all of the other things that were occurring during that time that are feeling this sense of burnout. And so reach out to Hillarie Kay and find out more about what she does and have her help you. So with that, it's a wrap. Everybody have a fantastic week and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much for listening. The song Ride is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week and I'll talk to you next week.
Find your own kind of happy.